Shelter Cluster presentation, continuing our tradition of these weekly presentations. It gives me great pleasure to welcome the members of the Iraq Shelter Cluster team. Emmanuel, I think, will be doing the presentation. So welcome, Emmanuel, and thank you to the team for their contributions and efforts over the last couple of days to get the presentation ready. We know the Iraq cluster has been in a difficult situation since the passing of the coordinator, Petya, and we have discussed and remembered Petya in the last couple of months. So just to make note of that as well. So thank you very much, Emmanuel, for stepping up. We know that also in Iraq more generally, that there's been a really challenging situation there for many, many years. The context has changed. A lot of the camps, the IDP camps, have closed, others have consolidated, but there's still a really significant residual humanitarian caseload and some very significant and challenging shelter issues, particularly around durable solutions and what we're going to do to find resolution to the displacement context there for many, many people. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Emmanuel to begin the presentation. Thanks very much, Emmanuel. Over to you.
Thank you for this session. As the Iraq team, I would just walk us through our presentation, but in between, my colleagues also will chip in. Aziz and Omar will be presenting. But to get us off, our presentation will be in line with basically the previous ones, taking into consideration the outline above. Basically, we'll start with an introduction of the team, and then the context, and then we go into the IDP and returnees overview or situation on the ground to which we're responding. And then we'll give an overview of our response so far in our third agenda. Then we'll look at durable solution and transitioning, which is a core subject matter that we are dealing with at the moment. And then we will wrap up from our side with challenges and proposed solutions before we pass it to all for Q&A. As Otika, the Information Management Officer for the Shelter Cluster. I've been with the team for over 3 years now, and the rest of my colleagues are online. I will kindly request them to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Aziz Abul Timman. I'm the Subnational Cluster Coordinator for Northern Iraq, KRI, Nanawa, and Kirkuk. Also the Technical Officer National. Over.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. This is Omar Mehedi, Subnational Cluster Coordinator for Center and South. Over.
Good afternoon. This is Mohammed Faisal, Information Management Officer, Erbil.
Thank you, everybody, for introducing yourselves from our team. As you can see, these are the persons behind the Iraq Shelter Cluster team at the moment. As already mentioned by Brett, earlier on, we also were led by Petya for most of this year until her sad demise, which happened in July. On the left, you will see the Iraq map, which represents our business coordination. The northern part is coordinated mainly by Aziz at the moment, and the center and south of the coordination there is being done by our colleague Omar. So in the Iraq context, we would like to just point out that the shelter cluster has been active since January of 2014, which also happened to be the onset of the crisis, the conflict that we've been experiencing in the country for a long time. And since 2014, we've been seeing a wave of both IDPs and returnees, as per the graph shown, whereby also you'll find the peaks and basically of both the two line graphs marks occasions where there are profound conflicts in the country, either conflict between the ISIL and government or other actors. So that spiked basically the number of IDPs shooting, or the number keeps rising based on that. And until date to date, we have a figure of 4.8 returnees countrywide and 1.8 IDPs in the country. This is a figure that keeps changing as, let's say, population movements take place from time to time.
But a chicken dinner.
I can hear somebody in the background. If you can mute your mic, would be good. So as an overview at the moment, as of July, the IDP population in country is 1.2 million people, spread across the entire country in the 18 governorates, but mainly in the governorates you see with the red dots on your left, on the map on your left. Meanwhile, the returnee population is at 4.8 million. Again, across the 8 governorates that you see basically marked in blue on the map on your right. So this is basically the base population that the shelter cluster is intervening, or its response is basically to meet the needs of these two main population groups. Out of the two population groups, a more closer look into the IDP in camp is that we have, out of the population, we have income population is made up of 15%, while also of this IDP population, we have a population of about 9% who are staying, who are currently living in critical shelter. This is basically to also shed light on our particular intervention area, which is on shelter. So, for IDPs, we are at least concerned a lot about this 9% who are in critical shelter. The rest of IDPs are in private settings in general. But nonetheless, these private settings also have shelter challenges, which we have to innovate in terms of how to address their needs, their humanitarian needs. On the other hand, the 4.8 million returnees, majorly the critical shelter population is made up of 4%. But when we look at 4% of that huge figure, it's also a huge number. These are basically mainly people who have challenges in upon their returns. They have challenges in maybe accessing their damaged shelter, which the humanitarian intervention needs to address. By and large, the larger population of returnees have also gone back to their residences of origin. That's about 96%, whereby they have relatively stable residential kind of arrangement, but with concern in terms of other humanitarian needs that needs to be addressed. I will give an overview of basically our response to date. At the moment, in our 2021 HRP, we have been targeting a population of about 370,000 out of the identified 934 million people in need as an overview. And at the moment, as of our July reporting, basically we have reached about 73,000 people with NFI needs. This is across the population groups that we're targeting, that is, be it IDP in camp, IDP out of camp, or returnees. And then we have also reached 30,000 people with shelter interventions during this period. I will point out that this, let's say, achievement marks about 40% of the people, of the targeted people with NFI have been reached, and 16% have been reached with basically shelter intervention. As you can see, our individual graphs for the people in need, people out of need, and returnees basically shows relatively low achievement at this time of the year. But traditionally, we have reporting increasing, especially in the third quarter of our report of the year, so that at the end of the year, we'll have some sort of a spike in reporting as partners try to wind up the year. But by and large, this result, the result we are experiencing is because of very high number of vulnerable people in country due to the poor shelter condition. And at the same time, we were targeting relatively a small percent of the people in need because of, let's say, known challenges, especially on donor fatigue. We are talking of a situation whereby we are in like protracted displacement from time to time, which donor fatigue creeps in at this point, so that our intervention, the humanitarian intervention, is crippled due to the funding level that are being realized. And in the past year, especially from 2020 to date, we all know that also COVID-19 came around, and with it came challenges, right from restriction of movement of, let's say, the actors, NGOs, and the UN community when it comes to intervening to meet this need. So these are some of the reasons that maybe some of the factors that have contributed to this, let's say, achievement level that we have. So I will pass the mic to my colleague Aziz to take us through the other part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Our activities under the HRP 2021 are non-food item, critical shelter upgrades in camp, critical shelter upgrades and sealing of kit in out-of-camp and returnees setting, and rental subsidies as cash for rent. The method that we've used this year has changed from the past couple of years, where we had like a already predetermined kit that can be distributed to the beneficiary. This year we had a different approach, where we managed to have like a list of items that our partners can tailor from, following a need assessment to address the needs as required. And that's applied for both NFI items and SOKs. Next slide. We have 13 partner reported achievements so far as of August 2021. And these are like the main partners. We have a couple of international and national NGOs plus UN agencies. And we have a couple of tools that we use to follow up on activities and which is the first one is our interactive dashboard, in which here you can find all the reported achievement by our partners, all the plans reported by our partners, including also their assessment, and an overview of the shelter data and the NFI data. And as you can see here, highlighted in the circle in red, that we have 13 partner reported so far this year. And that we can track like information back to previous years, where in 2020 we had by the end of the year we had 25 partners, and back in 2016, for example, we have 77 reported partner in our achievement, and that's an indication on how like the we're getting like less partner, the funding, the humanitarian funding is decreasing. Beside that tool, the shelter cluster have been cooperating quite closely with other clusters and other entities. For example, with CCM cluster, where we have developed the support in developing the dashboard on the left side, which is the informal sites mapping on all over Iraq. And we had our IM expertise joining with CCM to produce that dashboard and following on. And also we have, in the past 3 years, we have joining with UN Habitat in creating the war damage shelter rehabilitation reporting tool, which is the dashboard showed on the right side. And in that one, it captures all the data related to rehabilitation, whether it's humanitarian or under recovery and resilience, from our partners and other development actors. Also, we have a close partnership with the cash working group before we go to the durable solution, in which we are supporting them in in the using and the training of the SEVA tool, which is the socio-economical vulnerability assessment tool. That is the main tool for the shelter cluster partner to use to determine the vulnerability of beneficiaries. And from that, we can do our targeting and selection. Moving on to the other subject, which is the durable solution and transitioning. We're not new for through the past couple of years, and especially since 2017, we started gearing up in a larger scale towards a durable solution. That was, and the first point was the use of SEVA, as I just mentioned earlier, because that tool was developed by Cash Working Group in Iraq, and it's in line with the World Bank and the MOSA, which is the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs in Iraq, to determine the vulnerability status of a family. So that was the first step. Adding to that is the ward and shelter repairs in areas of return to provide a durable return for IDPs back to their area of origin. And from the HRP 2021, the ward damage shelter repairs activity was excluded as it's an expensive activity. So that was like more pushed towards the durable solution. However, we are still supporting our partners who are conducting such activities by coordinating and liaising with other partners who are working on the ground. And still, we are providing support to update the ward damage shelter repairs tool that we showed earlier. In 2019, another transition step was taken where we wanted to shift away from emergency shelter setup in IDPs in camp. And the start was in Duhok Governorate in KRI region in the northern of Iraq. And since it has like the biggest caseload of IDPs in camp and out of camp, plus the biggest number of IDP camps, which are 16 camps, 11 from out of those camps are tented camps. In 2019, July, we drafted a note or a position paper where we submitted to the officials, to the government officials of Duhok, which contain a couple of options on how to transition away. And that time, that paper was put on hold by the government in the same year. Until recently, in June 2021, a fire incident happened in one of the camps, which is Sharia camps in Duhok, that redirected the government into rethinking their transitioning away from emergency shelter mode, and we reopened that chapter. And the outcomes of that, of those steps so far, the authorities has as an act of emergency, supported the affected families, which was 355 affected families in Sharia camp, by allowing the camp management to construct a block concrete on top of the, by using concrete block to construct a shelter on top of their slab, pre-existing slab for the tents. And from there, we had a couple of meetings, and this was the first step towards transitioning away from emergency shelter to semi-permanent shelter. We came up with 3 options to the government, which are under development, and it should be a self-constructed shelter by the beneficiaries themselves. And the options were, the first one is concrete block. The second one is the interlocking compressed stabilized earth / soil brick, or the traditional mud houses, or we refer to as adobe houses. Moreover, on that, the shelter cluster is leading a technical team into setting the specification, the technical specification of each option, in which then the government with the camp management and CCCM will produce to the beneficiaries in those camps to select from. The role of the cluster will be supporting one option, which is the interlocking compressed stabilized mud brick. Next slide, please. Transitioning. starting to 2020 and even before that, we had like some smaller step towards transitioning, but like the actual start was in September 2020, where there was a still need for a critical role for the shelter cluster to play in supporting people in need. One activity and project should be completed while current and future needs are still there. Priorities and responses are articulated for 2021 through the HNO and HRP process. Another step was taking the year after this year, starting in January, where we start reaching out for development partners like UNDP and UN Habitat to support in the driving and the transitioning. Mainly the channel was open with UN Habitat due to their responsibilities in liaising with in monitoring the World Damage Shelter Rehabilitation tool and their close contact with the Ministry of Planning. And for the shelter cluster, it's the challenge was we don't have a counterpart and one inline counterpart from the government to the handover flow. So this is why we addressed the UN Habitat for that one. And also with the starting or the initiating of the Durable Solution Technical Working Group, we have started as phase 3 from September 2021 and liaising closely with the Durable Solution Task Force. And also we are taking part in the Shelter/HLP subgroup of that technical working group in order to transit away from the cluster towards the durable solution. And also we're having an in-depth discussion with the ICCG and also with our SAG members. Next, please. I'll turn the mic to our colleague Omar to go over the challenges. Omar, over to you.
Thank you, Aziz. Now with all those activities and partners come many challenges in implementation and coordination. So here are some of those challenges. The first one is a lack of funding. We experienced the lack of funding starting from last year with the COVID-19 pandemic. This makes it difficult to our partners to implement the planned activities. So right from the previous HRP for last year, we experienced these issues or challenges with the funding. The second challenge is the transition discussion, as mentioned by my colleague Aziz. The transition discussion with the ICCG and the Durable Solution Technical Working Group started, but there is no it's like slowly in the progress, and there is no clarification of the transition vision yet. The third challenge is the high severity of the damage in certain areas in Iraq. So many areas suffered from the military operation, and that caused a lot of destruction in the houses and the infrastructure in the cities and surrounding villages. So this is linked to the challenge number 1, the funding issues, because if you have like Cat 3 or Cat 4 damaged houses, then most of the partners can't support in this case because of their budget limitations. The fourth challenge is the access issues and security incidents. You know, Iraq is like in a fragile situation, so there is many security incidents, and there is also some access issues and access restrictions on certain areas. And also there is many and different on-ground security actors and the difficulties in coordination with all these, with all those actors. Coming to the last challenge is the COVID-19 pandemic, which has a major factor since the starting of the pandemic on the implementation of the partners' activities, because most of our partners forced to pause or hold their activities during the pandemic, which also affected the overall achievements
Alexa,
of our
turn off the
partners.
music. Alexa, turn off the music.
Sorry, the possible solution, we offer some possible solutions to the challenges that we face. So
Sorry, I think you have been muted. Can you please unmute to continue?
sorry, yeah. We offer some possible solutions to the challenges that we are facing. So the first solution is the donor engagement at various levels. And thanks to our colleagues in the Shelter cluster, they are providing like all the tools and the reports to have a predicted and harmonized response. Then the active participation by the Shelter cluster and the partners in durable solution task force structure at national and subnational levels. Also having more engagement and participation with the durable solution actors to implement the activities in the areas with the severe needs and to enable the smooth transition. The Shelter cluster also is closely working and coordinating with the ICCG and to report the access issues facing our partners to facilitate the access in certain areas. And also the Shelter cluster for the COVID-19 pandemic, the Shelter cluster developed the COVID-19 related guidelines to our partners. And like there is like two COVID-19 guidelines that were developed by our colleagues. The first one is and response in the IDP camps, establishment and management of the Q&I area, the quarantine and isolation areas. And the second one is the construction site safety protocols for COVID-19 context. Now I think over to Emmanuel for the questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all, Aziz and Omar, for this. And we would throw the ball back to our participants online. Basically, we would like to receive questions and comments from your side on what we've presented, as well as maybe suggestions to us, especially in the last part when we spelled out some of the challenges that we are undergoing and maybe some of the solutions we've tried. Of course, such solutions are not perfectly working at the moment, but we'd like to maybe hear from your side. If at all you've experienced such challenges on your side, how did you work them out and how would you advise us? Over to you. Thank you.
It's Magdalena here. I have a quick question. Out of all those challenges that you mentioned in the presentation, what would you say was the biggest one and continues to be the biggest one in 2021?
Yeah, I will. I will take this on, and maybe my colleagues can complement my response. But on top of the lists, as we started enlisting our challenges, I think funding has been a major issue. Various partners have come to us, basically telling us that maybe they are closing down their projects, or they are not active in areas that we knew they were active before, because their projects have come to an end. So funding is on top of the list as we were thinking, we were reviewing our challenges, and at the same time, yeah, that would be the top challenge from my side, from the situation we've been undergoing so far.
Thank you.
I will add on top of that is the continuous large need for big shelter intervention, which is mainly the war damage shelter rehabilitation, which cannot be covered through the humanitarian funding as it's a costly activity. Over.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madalena, for the question, and I can see Brett's hand is up. Go, Brett.
Thanks, Emmanuel and colleagues. Maybe it's appropriate for either you, Emmanuel, or Aziz. You're in the middle of what's kind of a protracted humanitarian, but also a really significant development challenge. When you're talking about the permanent housing issues, especially the lack of durable solutions around war-damaged housing, what kind of plans are in place or ideas with the big development actors? I mean, World Bank typically does a lot of post-conflict reconstruction, especially when it's around durable solutions. Do you have any sense of what's going on with those kinds of actors other than what you'd mentioned? Or any regional donors or actors within the Middle East, or others that you may know of? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brett, for that question. Again, I'll give it a go, and then I will ask my colleagues to complement on the same. Yeah, basically, for the past few years, we've seen development actors coming in also in addressing this huge need on basically rehabilitating war damaged shelter. As much as maybe their development in nature, but we've been coordinating or closely working, for example, with UNDP and UN Habitat through their projects, their planned projects towards basically rehabilitating war damaged shelter. And these continue to be the largest actors in this particular space. Always, they cover a huge area once they are implementing a project to respond towards the needs of war damaged shelter. So that is that's one thing that's already happening, and it's also been happening this year. We've continued to receive requests from such entities for example, asking us which areas they would target, which areas have been assessed and have not yet been, let's say, anything done in such. That's one. And secondly, also, I have not gone through it in detail, but the UN Development Plan, I can't remember its right name or acronym, but recently it has been signed, and I think it's also going to focus on durable solution, basically trying to connect the humanitarian development nexus through such a countrywide plan. Basically, this is indeed a plan for the UN, the development aspect of, let's say, intervention in conjunction with government's priority. Yeah, I admit I've not gone through the document. It's been recently published, but a component of that must be addressed in the same. Thank you. Colleagues, any complement to that, to Brett's question? And yeah, let me know. Otherwise, we also encourage other members present to post their questions either in chat or raise your hand and we'll give you the floor. Thank you. If there's no any question that's coming, can I maybe post my own? Basically, we've been receiving, we've been having conversations around transition for some time now. It's a subject that comes in so often during the year, but it's a subject that does not, let's say, have definite, let's say, implementation plan. I wonder from your experience, those of us online, from your, let's say, experience in any other context or in terms of ideas on how to handle the transition discussion. This is something that we are constantly basically having in mind. We have at the moment what Aziz presented in the transition section is our basically transition strategy that we've been having, and we keep updating it every year, and would like to maybe hear any experience that you have in your current operation, if you are within this phase or from other experience. Thank you.
Emmanuel, we have a question in the chat box. So we have one from USAID BHA asking, does the durable solution framework includes critical shelter needs to support transition effort? Also, what is the shelter cluster priorities of critical shelter in informal settlement? Now, to answer the first question, there's not yet a solid framework that has been drafted. However, we are on the verge of working on that part through the Shelter HLP sub-working group of the Durable Solution Technical Working Group. We have drafted the first TOR on the role of that subgroup and where do they position themselves. It's not going to be a cluster like a TOR. It's mainly on drafting guidelines and advising partners on the way forwards. Also, through the DSTWG and ABC, which is an area-based coordination mechanism, have been established to cover some districts and more to be established also to cover more grounds where actors from different sectors can join together and discuss about the need in each area. So that one has been taking place already. In informal settlement, it is one of our main target through the HRP 2021, and also will go through the next year under the HRP 2022, where we provide a provision of supplying SOKs, which is the sealing of kit. Also, we have the critical shelter upgrade activity, where it tackles the need in such locations. And more to that, since we already had a meeting before with BHA, where we explained also the need for shelter upgrades in camp, and that was one of the main points that we are working on for the past 2 months. It is a transitioning away from emergency setup to a more durable one. Over.
Thank you, Aziz, for taking those 2 questions. I can also see Charles is basically commenting if you have any experience in handling old or unusable tents. if we could maybe just email him with such. From experience, and maybe Aziz, you can speak to this as well. Basically, as a practice, we also have the option of giving, let's say, IDPs when they're leaving the camp. We also our guidance is that they can leave, they can take the camp along to wherever they're going to settle, knowing that, of course, there'll be settlement or shelter challenges wherever they are going. That's something that we have been doing in the past, but practical experience with handling all unusable tent, maybe Aziz, you can speak more to that.
Thank you. Yes, it's a challenge in Iraq, as recycling is not an option in the country. So we had like thousands of used tents that we needed to get rid of. The only available option was to transport them or export them to a nearby country where there's a recycle companies that can use it. Other than that, we don't have any other option. Over.
Emmanuel, this is Kelly. If you could just send me an email with some of the details, that would be very helpful. Thanks.
Well received, Kelly. We will revert to you on email on this.
Also, thank you, Brett. Sharing that document will be great as an added experience or lessons learned from other countries to look into the opportunities to use the same in Iraq.
Yeah, thanks, Aziz. Thanks, Emmanuel. I'm happy to share that. And as you know, we've got the settlement profiling tool, which we developed with UN Habitat around long-term settlement upgrading. And there's some good, analytical processes within that tool. And we've piloted that in Kebrabaya in Ethiopia and Nakavali in Uganda as well. The whole tool may not be applicable, but I can send you that, and you can look at the various kinds of domains in the tool to see which bit you might want to utilize. For Somalia, it's also quite helpful looking at this durable solution strategy. It's UNDP, IOM, UNHCR, the government, and it's integrated with land use, land titling, permanent housing, education, infrastructure, livelihoods development, etc., etc. So it's quite comprehensive, and we can share that with you also. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. I just want to also highlight one of the challenges that we're facing in shelter upgrades in camp is that most of the camps are on lands that are not public property. It's a private lands that the government that the government managed to get a hold of to construct that camp. So we have a lot of HLP issue in place when it comes to such an activity. Plus the demographic changes and what the upgrading those camps will be in, what the effect of upgrading camps will be into that. So there's a lot of extra thing, and an experience from other countries will be highly appreciated to look into. And for that, we also working closely with the HLP subcluster on identifying those issues and how to address them and how to resolve them. Thank you.
We still have some time. If you have any comments, please share on the chat, or raise up your hand and take the mic. Dear Kamba, I can see in the chat you're interested in a document. Is it the document that Brad is going to share with us as well, or you're referring to something else?
Yes, the one that Brad mentioned.
All right, thanks.
We have another question from Wong. What do you think about the process and progress of returnees from Al-Hol? Since the beginning of the Al-Hol return wave to Iraq, it was set that MOMD and the local authorities will take the full responsibilities on following with that. So unfortunately, we don't have any feedback to give regarding that process. We offered through the ICCG that we can support if needed, but no one returned to us. Over.
Any more questions? If not, any last comments, Emmanuel or Aziz, before passing over to Brett?
That's all from our side. If there is no more question, Brett, please go ahead.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Angel. Nice image there of Pecha shared on screen. So thank you very much, Emmanuel, Aziz, colleagues. It's a really interesting piece of work that you profiled today. We know that you're going through a complicated programmatic time there as well, which you've really explained. I'll share the documents that I mentioned with you directly after this discussion. So we wish you all the best. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us for anything. Also, thank you to all the colleagues online as well. Thank you for your participation. Just to also remind you that the session that was planned for next week, which would have been the 22nd, that was Cameroon, and that's been postponed because our colleagues in Cameroon will be on mission at the time and don't have access to internet when they're in the deep field. So we will revert in 2 weeks' time from now. So just a note to everyone, there'll be no session next week. 2 weeks from now, the 29th, and it will be the Central African Republic that'll be presenting on the 29th. So thanks again to our colleagues from Iraq. You've done a wonderful job presenting everything, explaining very, very clearly. Thank you to everyone online for participating in your attention and questions. So good afternoon to all and best wishes, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you all from the Iraq team. We appreciate your participation.
Thank you all as well.
Thank you all.